I'm Chad Ruthermond,
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
and welcome to NOCLIP Pocket, forged by the sea. Today, we're going to be talking about Finger Bones, the Moon Sliver, the Music Machine, and Iron Lung, all games that were developed by David Szymanski and published in 2014 for Finger Bones, 2014 for the Moon Sliver, 2015 for the Music Machine, and 2022 for Iron Lung. So, welcome to Halloween, first off. Take out the lizard, first of all. And this Halloween, I basically run the fucking show, the whole carnival. That's me. I'm the one doing it. And this has been something that's been on my list of things I wanted to cover for like a long time, but never really sat down to, one, pick what games I wanted to do, and also like find a suitable place for it. Because like at first I had considered doing these games as individual episodes, but as you played, I think, all of them in a single day, it doesn't really it doesn't lend itself to that level of like deep introspection on each of them, you know?
But first, you give us a like or a rating. It'd be greatly appreciated. Forgot to say that. But, yeah, I don't ever remember you bringing these up until this year, so...
Yeah.
I know we played, what is it, A Wolf in Autumn?
Yeah.
Which, years ago.
Yeah, sorry to Wolf and Autumn fans. There were time considerations to take into account.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I feel like probably the Music Machine could have gotten its own episode, but yeah, I played all of the three of them in one day.
Oh, yeah.
And the first one, Finger Bones, and on a different day.
Yeah. And I kind of wanted to talk about these in chronological order with their release. David Szymanski is probably most well known at this point for being the developer behind the game DUSK, which is like a Doom style, like old PC shooter game, that got pretty popular because it's a good game. But it is horror themed, but it is more on the action area of the horror spectrum. And I feel like we talk about horror games every year, and I feel like a lot of them are action themed, and I liked the idea of doing all of his little walking simulator type games. And that's kind of the genre that all of these are going to fall into. They're different pieces of interaction in each of them, but they all they follow the same rules, essentially. The Music Machine and Iron Lung step outside of the bounds a little bit more, but we'll get into that when we get to them. Did you have anything like collectively that you wanted to say up front before we go through each one?
Not really, I don't think, without like getting too like immediately into stuff.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and let's get into it. Finger Bones is the first game, and it is both the shortest and, I would say, debatably the least polished of the four. It has a focus on what it wants to do. It's like the world's easiest escape room, but it is also so straightforward that it is more... all of these games are more about their narrative, with the exception of Iron Lung, which I'll be saying a lot. But this one is more... This one is a narrative, essentially, with, like, trinket game mechanics sprinkled into it.
Yeah, in my head, I'd say it's less that it's not as polished and more that it's just like a proof of concept more than it's trying to be an actual game.
Yeah. That's probably a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically, you're in like a bomb shelter or a cabin on top of a bomb shelter or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just like uncover a little narrative, like an environmental storytelling notes scattered around. Pick up clues to punch in code words into a a whatever you'd call it,
like
security system.
Yeah, keypad,
yeah,
something along those lines. Could have key cards.
Yes,
though.
no key cards though.
Yeah,
just passcodes.
Yeah, I remember when I played Fingerbones the first time, which was my introduction to this dude and his games overall. It was pretty much exactly what I wanted when I found it. I think what it was is I literally was like, can I play a horror game right now
for free?
For free, that's going to take like less than half an hour. And this like came up. It was like a Google search I did. I'm sure I typed it in a dumb syntax and this is what popped up. And it rubbed me the right way.
Uh-huh. It knew just how you liked it.
It did. It knew exactly what I wanted at the moment, and I came off of it really positively. I was like, this game rules for a 15-minute game. And then when I went to replay it for this, so this is, I think it's my third time through. I don't remember if I played it through a second time. If I did, it would have been with somebody, probably. Mm-hmm. I was just shocked, I guess, at how little there was. I thought there was more to the game than there actually is, which is not necessarily a slight. Like you said, it feels like a proof of concept. But, yeah, everything is, like, very vague. All of the textures, and this does kind of, this bleeds into the Moon Sliver as well, are very, like...
low res.
Yeah. The low res, and also they don't seem to be the right textures for things.
Mm-hmm.
Like the wall and the power generator have the same texture to them. They both look like granite.
It's hard to tell what the generator even is at first. I think it makes really effective use, though, of like sound effects. And like, I might be misremembering, but I feel like there's like a hazy, foggy effect in there a little bit too.
Yeah.
There's little details. I think he kind of stretches a long way, and there is like a lo-fi charm to it, almost like the low resolution textures and like the low poly models, almost kind of give it like a creepypasta kind of feel. Especially if it's like just a thing you found for free online, it can almost kind of add to the creepiness a little bit.
Yeah. No, yeah, and it's that sound design is actually a good call out, because this game is ostensibly a horror game. Its main purpose is to be at least a little like chilling. But as far as like tension goes, I think this works as sort of an O. Henry story where you start off and you go, oh, like, what is going on? And like you read the notes and you're like, some guy left it, and then you go, oh, it's me, I'm the bad guy. Which is going to be a theme. But you go through the rooms, and the tension really only ramps up when you're given these audio cues. When you hear the crying when you go to the basement is the first time that you get, like, an actual scare in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it leaves the door open for things to be unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how it manages to be, like, actually kind of creepy for like how brief and like low fidelity it is.
Yeah. Narratively speaking, which first, I guess before anything, most of these games are pretty narrative focused. So if you're somebody who is listening to the podcast without having played the games, Fingerbones is free. I think buying all 4 of these games will cost you less than $10.
I think they're all $5 each, except for Fingerbones.
Interesting. That might be true.
Yeah.
They're really cheap, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could cost up to...
It'll cost you like $15.
$15. And so, yeah, like, as far as Fingerbones go, we're about to spoil it, so, like, whatever. Maybe go play it and see if it's up your alley, and then you can move on to the other ones if it is. But yeah, the actual plot structure of it is pretty simple, because you are just picking up these notes slaying around, and it's basically the story of a guy who builds like you said, a bomb shelter, a survival bunker of some kind, and has like his obsession with it makes him have a falling out with his family, And then an apocalyptic event of some sort probably does happen, or I guess could be in his head. I'm not actually 100%.
Or it could be like a 10 Cloverfield Lane thing.
Yes.
Where he's just making it up.
10 Cloverfield
keeping
Lane,
his like family hostage or whatever.
Yeah, definitely stole their plot from this game. For sure. But it has these like little musings on morality, like are laws really necessary? Is what they say moral actually moral, or is it all just in this our desire to procreate, etc., etc.? Basically supervillain shit that they talk about. And then the titular finger bones are the finger bones of, I believe, his daughter.
Yeah, it's my interpretation as well.
Yeah, and that he just keeps in a wall safe that you go and find. And then you end up going down and just sitting alone and dying in the bunker at the end.
Yeah, I think the most affecting line on me, or the one that stood out the most, is like you read like a little like journal entry or whatever note that he wrote, where he was like, about how he's like bored now, and he's like, oh, the excitement of those first few years, like how he like reveled in the fact that he was in an apocalyptic event.
Yeah.
And was able to use his bomb shelter. Like, I think that kind of puts you in like his frame of mind in like I don't know if I want to say like a relatable way, but like, I don't know, something about that stood out to me.
Yeah. I agree. I think that there has to be like a point of connection between you and the main character for it to really land. So it is good that they kind of like, it baits you into it by making you not sure if you are the guy or not, but you are the guy.
Yeah, I don't really remember. I feel like I caught onto it pretty early, but I'm not sure. I won't swear to that.
Yeah, and I don't remember where I was the first time I played it, but obviously this time I knew from the beginning. But yeah, and that's Finger Bones. Like we said, it's pretty short. It feels like a proof of concept kind of thing. But it sets out a lot of the stuff that David Szymanski proves to be pretty good at, specifically narrative writing and that sound design.
Yeah, I liked Finger Bones, but I'm actually surprised we got this much conversation out of it. Because it is just that short.
Yeah, well, I like to roll it into the stuff at the beginning.
Yeah.
Keep it, get as much as we can. But we should move on because we don't want this to go for 7 hours. Otherwise, I'll look like a fool. And the Moon Sliver is the second game, and is the second one in release order. So the Moon Sliver and the Music Machine are connected games in terms of their narrative. And I didn't know this because I hadn't actually played the Music Machine. So it was interesting going back to the Moon Sliver with the expectation that I might learn something else about it, because this is the most cryptic of the games by a long shot.
Yeah, like you had expressed this to me, or I was in the room where you found this out or whatever. Yeah, so I went into both of them knowing that they were connected, and I didn't really pick up on it. I know there were some names that came up, like Roger was one of them, and a couple of others, but like I couldn't tell you what the actual connection is between the two. But yeah, the Moon Sliver I thought had the most appealing sounding name to me going in, and I like a lot of what it has going on. I think it had the best music of all of them. I think like the music in the little library building and down in the bunker was really good, or stand out in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good call out, I think, because despite one of the games we're talking about being called the Music Machine, music is used really sparingly in all of these games. Finger Bones, if I'm remembering correctly, only has music at the end. And it doesn't really sound like much of anything. Like, it's not really a standout track or anything. But yeah, I agree with you. I think this probably does have the best music in of the four, though I wasn't keeping super close track.
Mm-hmm.
But it once again emphasizes that good sound design. I think Moonsliver to me is the least creepy of the four.
Mm.
And where it excels in being creepy is when it starts to get, when the weather starts getting worse. You get that wind and you do feel very isolated on the island. And so it has this like effect to it that makes you feel a little bit uneasy because of the way that like, oh, you can hear the wind blowing, and then like when it gets darker and it feels more inclement and bad. And then in the tunnels, that just sort of like desolate emptiness with that song that plays, I think is actually really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I do think part of what I really liked about both the Moonsliver and the Music Machine is they kind of start out just feeling like walking simulators. Mm-hmm. And you almost like kind of forget that they're going to be horror games. And then, bam, they become like creepy towards the end. And I really liked that in both of them. You get to just kind of like explore and like just kind of unravel like what's happened in this place. And then it like shifts to like a creepier, more dire tone. And I think that really works.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, and especially here in the Moonsliver, you're not given anything immediately to be like anxious about. Like there isn't anything immediately chasing you or whatever.
Yeah, I did find the weather kind of did that for me, where like there's nothing in the game to reinforce this at all, but just the idea of like that kind of sandstorm that's happening made me want to like not spend too much time outside.
Yeah.
It's just like kind of like psychologically, I guess.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And like the the game itself doesn't give you a ton of like options as far as things to do when you are outside. So yeah, I think that it kind of works together in that way. The game doesn't want you to spend a bunch of time doing nothing. It wants you to move the story along. I think the game itself, I think this may be the only game that actually tells you, like, set aside an hour to play it. Fingerbones, this, and I believe also the Music Machine. No, the Music Machine does have saves. Mm-hmm. But this and Fingerbones do not. So it does say to just, like, set time aside. So it would not behoove the game for you to just be wandering around for an hour.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like this game is the one that most reminded me of other games I've played. It immediately felt a bit like Dear Esther and a little bit like Amnesia to me.
Yeah.
Like, I think even Dear Esther doesn't it start the exact same way. Like, you wake up in a cabin, like, on a shore.
Yep.
And then, like, go explore other similar buildings nearby. And you get a flashlight or something. Yeah.
I think Dear Esther starts in what I always associated as being the building that you go to at the end of the dam mission in GoldenEye, which I'm sure is a real kind of building that I just don't know. It's a concrete structure with big open windows. Mm-hmm. And then you go up a hill, and I think that there may be other structures. It's been a grip since I played that game.
Yeah.
But yes, Dear Esther was also the first thing I thought about, which I guess fuck you, Dear Esther. You spent all that time and money making your game look really good. And I think that this game, which does not have anywhere near the level of polish of visuals, reminds me of it. Like, it puts me in the exact same mental state as Dear Esther does. Mm-hmm. Just isolated, a little bit uneasy. It's a good vibe that it gets.
Yeah.
A good, bad vibe.
Yeah, and like despite the game or this one, the Moonsliver being like the most cryptic, as you said, I still felt like I could basically piece together what had happened. To the point where I didn't feel like I was just like aimlessly exploring some houses. Mm-hmm. So I think it hit a nice like you said with Fingerbones, where like it did exactly what you wanted it to. I think this kind of hit a sweet spot for me for like a weird indie walking sim. Like, I think I was able to, like, follow it just well enough and have just enough of it left up to, like, my imagination, which is, like, an area I wanted it to fall into.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a note, actually, about this game and its storytelling and the fact that it felt like, because it knew that it was going to be a short thing, it has all these characters. Like, I think there are 5 named characters in this game. And you play as, I think, Abel is his name. He's the older guy. And you, once again, don't know this until the end. But you don't get to spend a ton of time with them, but it is a character-focused narrative.
Yeah, you get to explore their houses.
Yeah, so you get, like, these little bits and pieces of them, but for the most part, they fall into, like, pretty broad categories of people that you can kind of understand, which I think makes it why the storytelling feels snappy and, like, understandable. It's because they use sort of a broad characterization for the characters.
For sure. Do you want to actually talk about one of the more, of all the walking simulator games here, one of the most mechanics element of any of them, with the flashlight?
Yeah.
And having to recharge it? Do you feel like it adds anything at all?
No. If I'm being very honest, no, I don't think that it really does. I will say that the idea to me is that it was supposed to make the maze part of the game more tense, because the light could go out, you could be left in darkness, and then what do? Restart the game?
Yeah, it does feel like it's specifically in there for the underground bunker area. So it does kind of feel like they should have just given it to you, like it was just in the bunker when you walked in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does seem a little bit, and there's so many charging stations too that it's never like hard to keep it charged up.
Yeah. I feel like this seems like a thing that kind of probably got iterated out of the Music Machine, where they tried it with fewer charging stations or like a shorter battery life, and they found it was too hard to keep the light lit, and it wasn't fun to just be in the dark. But they had gone through the effort of making it, and all the houses are dark now because they assume you're going to have a flashlight.
Right.
So they went ahead and just kept it in anyway.
Yeah.
It just made it easier. Yeah, I don't love it. I don't think it adds a ton. I think because the whole game is told in text, like all the story is. You don't have to, like, shine your light on a piece of paper to read it. So what ends up happening is you go in, you look around with the flashlight, you click on a thing, and then you turn the flashlight off to sit there and read text.
Yep, because the text is white,
Yeah.
so it is actually harder to read it if you leave the flashlight on. You just turn it off, and then, like, you look a little bit up to, like, a shadowy corner, and then you can just read the white text on the black background.
Yeah, it's it's extremely strange. And I mean, that's another thing that, like, these are the growing pains.
Yeah, that felt like a particular weakness of like pretty much all of these games, except I think the Music Machine, is UI. Like certain visual elements felt like a bit of a stumbling block.
Yeah. Moonsliver is the worst about it, because I think that it has its problem with the text taking up like a quadrant of the screen.
Sometimes text will overlap.
It's like, it's really bizarre, and like I can see myself trying to fight through this problem, like from a coding perspective, right? Like you look at it and you go like, how do I fade this text, or like get the text out of there after they do a thing? But like the system you've set up has it pop up when you do this, but then you've put too many objects that generate the text in the room, and so you go fuck it and ship it, and that's how we end up with this weird thing. I don't think it detracted horribly.
No,
it's just kind of weird, especially given that the game is 8 years old, that you kind of just like you go, oh, it's an old game kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
this was back when games development was much harder for individuals to do.
Yeah, it did seem like you could probably just have it so you could just click to make it go away.
It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. But, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? I want to touch on this before we move on. There's actually a couple things I still want to touch on. But one of them is a recurring theme where in every game you play the bad guy from somebody's perspective. In this case, it would be the bad guy as opposed to everyone else on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Because you play as the character who takes the moon sliver and destroys it, throws it into the ocean. I don't know what he does with it.
I think it says that he destroys it.
Okay. Good.
But I won't swear by that. He gets rid of it.
He gets rid of it, which allows this monster, the forest fangs. I don't remember what it was called.
Me neither.
It had a name.
Yeah.
And to come and kills everyone else, essentially. And then you. Mm-hmm. Except for Issa, I think.
Yeah, Isa.
Shoots herself with a gun before that can happen. And this is the part that actually does tie into the music machine, so we'll talk about it more there.
Mm-hmm.
But that is, it's Fingerbones. You play as the guy who kidnaps his daughter and I guess removes her hand. This game you're playing as the guy who sets the monster loose, though with the belief that this is actually freeing them from hell.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll get in on the further ones. I'll jump back. This is a recurring segment on this probably 45-minute podcast. It will recur quickly.
Yes. I really liked the ending of this one.
Yeah.
Where you reach the end of the tunnel and you turn around and there's like a dude there. Pretty spooky.
It's a spooky.
Was not
dude.
expecting it. Like, it's. I feel like it's like even like a trope or like something I've seen before. I don't know exactly what to call it, but like it's a game where there's no NPCs and you grow accustomed to not seeing any people in it, and then when you do run across a person, it feels really impactful.
Yep.
It has that kind of effect. Like you just don't expect there to be another character in the hall with you, which makes it work really well.
Yeah, and I would hesitate to even call it like a jump scare. Like it's so calm and almost not expected. As you just described, you were expecting anything but that. But it is like you turn around and it's sort of like a moment of like realization and dread, I think is what they're going for. And yeah, I agree. I think this ending is great.
Does it say something in the text that like your character turns around and then you have to do it like as the player?
Yeah.
I think that makes it work even better because you actually have to turn around. Much like, once again, like Amnesia, where you have to open and close the doors and stuff.
True, yeah. Yeah, Amnesia, you open, close the doors, whatever the fuck we said, stole the 10 Cloverfield Lane stole the plot from Fingerbones, and PT stole the turnaround to get murdered because radio told you to turn around thing from this game. Mm-hmm. He's actually a trailblazer. But yeah, I don't know. I think it works really well. Real quick before we move on, because it's going to also recur in that game, in Music Machine as well. Maze. Yes or no? What do you think about it? Yes or no? Don't answer that. That's not a good question. How do you feel about the maze?
I thought it was fine. Because like it contrasted, at least in my head, with like the more open beginning part, and then you had a more like linear, well, not linear because it's a maze, but like a more focused, like find the path kind of section.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't too long, so I thought it was fine.
Sure. I'm glad that you say that, because it tempers my hatred of mazes. But I know that is a personal thing and has nothing to do with how good a maze works in design. I mentioned this actually on the Breath of the Wild podcast, another thing that took a element from one of his games. Obviously. is I find mazes kind of pretty scary, just as a concept, because I feel like I'll get lost real easy. And that works in a horror game, right? Like, I go in, I'm like, uh-oh, a maze. My innate fear of mazes is going to come out and make this more frightening. But I think that it felt like a very long part of a really short game. Like, everything else was so piecemeal that the maze felt like weirdly out of place, like it was there to pad length. I wasn't really...
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. It feels a little bit like padding.
But that's it.
Yeah, I did not feel like it felt like a especially long part of the game. It's runtime.
I just thought, like, percentage-wise, that was my one concern. Otherwise, I think the maze worked fine, other than the aforementioned flashlight being kind of a non-issue. There it is. That's the game. Let's talk about the next one.
The Music Machine.
Oh my god. We're moving on to 2015.
Yes. This was my favorite of the four. And I think a big reason why I kind of touched on it is that the presentation is like a huge step up in this one. And I think of all four of them, it feels the most like a fully fleshed out game.
Yeah.
The Iron Lung is more gamey, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But like this one feels more in line with like other walking sims I've played. Like it was more like kind of matches my expectations. Like if someone was like, "Hey, try this cool like art like visuals, interesting walking simulator game."
Yes. And the very first line in my notes for this game is just the word aesthetic. Like, it's not that it's such a functional, great thing, part of the game, but just it stands out so much in comparison to the other games that we're talking about. I don't know, it's weird, because at first I was like, does this really add anything, or was it just sort of a stylistic choice? But I actually do really like the way that, like, shadows are now just complete darkness. It has like a monochromatic art style.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like Obra Dinn, except it doesn't have like the little pixelated like dithering.
Yeah.
So yeah, it adds like to there's like a part of like one of the areas that you can warp to later from the church is called like the Void. It has kind of like a almost like surreal. Like there's the red area where like it's like the whole fake satellite town and city and stuff, where there's a lot of like uncanny and dreamlike elements, and I think the visuals like add to that, and like the color of the area can kind of like suggest. It add to the tone as well. Like the red area is the fake town, and it makes it feel more sinister, etc.
It's one with the big weird moon in the sky.
Yeah, and it's black.
It's a black,
so it's cool. Yeah. And the initial island is like orange. It's like a sunset. It's like nice and peaceful, etc.
Yeah. That was going to be like basically the moment that you warp to a different zone. I was like immediately like, this is worth it. Like it looks really cool to go into the red fake city area and just be just really assaulted by the visuals in a way that like none of his other games are even really capable of doing with the style that they go for. It's there a lot of the things that are good about Moonsliver and Fingerbones and Iron Lung are subtlety, and the Music Machine really just does not. It does subtlety in its storytelling, but it does not do subtlety visually. And everything's really striking, and I do love that about this game.
Yeah, it feels like there were more concrete ideas from the beginning that are being executed on,
and also like
much like concrete
trees and shit.
Yeah, and like the other games feel a little bit more like experimental, a little bit more of like a like starting from like a smaller kernel of an idea, and this one felt like it was allowed to grow into a little bit more of a concrete tree before it started development.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about how this does more as a more traditional style game. Because in mostly, like, we say this like you're going to pull out a gun. Oh, oops, spoilers. But, like, mostly it is puzzle solving. But the puzzles feel so much more fleshed out than what was done in, like, in Fingerbones or the non-puzzles that existed in the Moonsliver.
Yeah, and I think there's also just more straightforward like narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're playing the ghost of a man possessing a girl's body.
Correct.
Or you're playing as the body of a girl being possessed by a man.
Yeah. I believe that the context of the game...
You're playing as
Quentin.
Quentin, yeah.
Yeah, and he is possessing Haley.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that gives it a little bit more structure. Because like there's like scripted bits, you know, like there's a part where you go down into like the underground passageway and like there's specific story beats. So yeah, I think it has more of like a narrative structure, and it does have like puzzles and stuff. So it gives it more of like a familiar structure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that of the original three, and if we include Wolf and Autumn in like the full collection, I think Music Machine is also my favorite of them. There's something about it that just like clicks a lot more, and I think it is because we are very basic. And just love a very straightforward plot with 3 acts game.
Yeah. I guess in defense of being basic, like we're people who can, I think, really appreciate like a weird experimental, like small indie game. Like we kind of seek them out, which is why we do this podcast. But I think it's just human nature to like kind of want something a little bit meatier, like you can sink your teeth into a bit more, and this is just that amongst these 4 games. Yeah. It's the main course.
Yeah, well,
I think
we will talk about that because I made a specification that you may have noted when I was talking about it. But I agree with you for the most part, though. I think that Music Machine kicks some ass for sure. I think the fact that you are playing as essentially 2 characters makes the delivery of the narrative a lot more dynamic. You get to actually have a conversation, and the flavor text of interacting with stuff has more like actual information because it's somebody who can see and interact and somebody who can feel and smell and taste and do all the things that a human body can do. So you get this, like, you actually get valuable information from the back and forth between the 2 of them. And I really like that dynamic.
Yeah. It's clever. It's a good way to get, more information. Like, even from just, like, you're exploring, like, a random house, you know, like, any little thing you find leads to, like, learning something about one of the 2 of them, usually.
Can we talk momentarily about the fact that Quentin's sole, pun intended, purpose in life, in death,
in
unlife, is to kill his host? Yeah,
so I guess we should talk about the setup because it is creepy and weird.
It is weird. And creepy in kind of a bad way.
Yes. Creepy in not a scary way, but in a creepy way.
Yes.
So Quentin and Haley had some kind of relationship. Quentin's a 34-year-old man.
30s, yeah. I don't remember exactly.
And Haley is 12.
13.
She will correct you. I think that she's turned 13 since he died.
I believe that's true.
But anyway. Quentin was not reciprocating her feelings. Like, she was, like, into him or whatever, had feelings for him. And he rejected her. And she did not take that well, told her dad, and accused Quentin of molesting her or whatever, something to that nature.
Yeah.
And then her dad killed him. And so now
According to the description given by Quentin, shot him 12 times in the chest.
Well, there you go.
Which is a lot of times to shoot a person.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
So I guess by some twist of fate, he's now possessing her body and trying to kill her.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
That's the story.
Of a not so lovely lady.
Yes. She was not bringing up three very lovely girls.
It was, yeah. I don't know. I both really like the setup and also wish that there was some other way they could have, like, set it up. Because it makes, like, if I describe that to a sane person, I think that they would be off-put. And I think they would be right to be that way.
Yeah, it's not something I can really speak to, but, like, it is one of those weird subjects, like dating with huge age gaps.
Yeah.
Or, like, you know, and they aren't even dating, it's just, like, a weird entanglement.
Right.
But, like, it's always a weird subject, I think. But I do think, like, people should talk about those things, because they do happen, but, like, I don't know. Something about it just... I don't know. It's one of those issues that makes me always feel, like, uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it is, because, like, it's the kind of thing that does not get talked about. Like, what is the proper protocol if you are Quentin in life? Well, first of all, your protocol probably should have started not having a close relationship with a 12-year-old.
But we don't really get the context of what their relationship, how it started or what it was.
Yeah, just that they did know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the part that is, like... It's hazy.
Like, was he her softball coach?
Right. Like, it could totally be... It's the thing that allows the game to sort of, like, skate by without... Because it's gray. There's no, like, real definition of what happened. But it does provide a very compelling, haunting reason. Like, the fact that he has taken over her body in a weird, haunting way... feels more like, oh, like, I see why he is a vengeful spirit, because she did get him killed in a pretty bad way, ruined his reputation, et cetera, et cetera. But you also see, as the game moves on, that he does actually feel like a warmness toward Haley. Which, once again, casts the blame back toward Quentin. Like, maybe this is how he was in life as well.
I don't know.
I don't know either, because it's never concretely said.
Maybe I'm just trying to, like, make it less creepy in my head.
Yeah.
But, like, I kind of never really believed that he really wanted to kill her. And I also feel like just because he was, like, fond of her doesn't mean, like, he was, like, in love with her or attracted to her.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So.
But we don't know.
That's true. Like, it is totally possible that, there was inappropriate things going on Quentin's end.
That's what I don't want to know.
Yeah.
But if it was available in the game, I didn't come across it.
Same.
But anyway, that's the setup and also part of the ending of the game.
Yeah.
Let's rewind. We were talking about the nice orange, comfortable island. One of the things that this game does really well, I think, is set up a sense of mystery. The fact that the big church, which is not the first structure you come across, but it will be, like, pretty early on, doesn't have any doors or windows, is an eerie thing that hit me the right way, much like Fingerbones did all those years ago.
Yeah.
To be like, this is a big concrete church with no doors or windows. Just, like, the impression of doors and windows is a creepy object to come across. And it did get me amped up to go exploring and figure out what the fuck was going on.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, moving on.
I don't know if I can add anything to that.
No, that's a good point.
But no, it is an interesting moment because, yeah, you will... probably go into a couple of cabins or houses first, and they are just regular cabins and houses, and then the church is fake.
Yes.
So it stands out, yeah. It's like a little carrot on the stick or whatever.
It also had this, like, whenever you walked into one of the structures, it would play this, like, tone, like a music note. And boy, did I think there was something that was important about that. And maybe there is, but I didn't ever find anything from just walking into houses and hearing the sound and being like, maybe if I do it in this order or like whatever. But you pretty quickly do find the entrance, which is a combination underground bunker and maze, really bringing it together from the previous two games. This one I liked more.
Yeah, I don't think it really qualifies as a maze so much as it's just like a couple of hallways.
Yeah, but like, I got lost.
I guess fair enough. It did take me a little while to notice the light switches on the walls.
Yeah.
Because they blend in with the bricks.
They sure do. Well, and that's one of the weaknesses of the color palette decision is like there really wasn't much that could have made them stand out.
Yeah.
They could have, I guess, made them actually stand out from the wall in terms of physical location.
Oh, yeah, like an actual switch.
Yeah, but it is just sort of a texture, like a button that's there. And we see a button later in the game that does stick out from the wall, and it looks pretty damn 90s.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what they were going for, was to avoid that look in the early part of the game. But yeah, you get into the church, basically. And there's this big thing that we later discover is not apparently the music machine, unless the music machine warp point takes you inside of it. I don't actually know.
I like that interpretation.
Okay.
And will now be my headcanon.
All right. So you find the music machine. Which is like a pipe organ that has 5 buttons on it.
Yeah. Like a weird facsimile of a pipe organ.
Yes, a horrible facsimile.
Yeah.
And you can use it in combination with these notes that you find, 2 of them in total, as far as I know, to punch in essentially a code in binary and warp to some other place. And the different places are pretty clearly not the earthly realm. They're like constructed realities. And you get a little bit of lore on that later from The Voice. But I thought this mechanic was actually just super cool and good.
Yeah, the same. Because you go into the church, or at least this was my experience, and like you read all the notes, and I did not realize you had to read the one through the inventory right away.
Yeah.
So like I'm like kind of like looking around, and I'm like, there's really nothing else here, and then like I'm looking at my stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, here's this note. And then I see like the code, and then it takes me a second to realize like it's binary. Like it hits that sweet spot, I think, where like it takes you just long enough to realize what it is, but then it's not too hard to like figure out. So you just have like this, you get a nice little epiphany moment of like, oh yeah, I'm super smart. I know how to fucking work the music machine. I minored in music machine in college.
No, I agree with that. I think it's the kind of thing that is like not so difficult as to block your progress for too long, but it is just enough to like
satisfy you.
Yeah, when you do finally get to like fucking slap your big ape hands on the buttons and turn the knob and see that a result occurred.
Yeah, and it's like the first thing you try. Like that's always satisfying, like when you just figure a puzzle out and it just works.
Yeah. It was good shit.
Like, fuck yeah. So the first place you warp to is I can't remember what it's called.
I don't remember this one.
The red zone, fake city.
The fake city, the red zone.
Yes. The Heinz red
the
zone.
highway to the danger zone. That's the one.
Yes. So this one, did you ever find out like if there was anything with those like transparent orbs outside of like the tunnel thing?
Sure didn't. No.
That really bothered me.
Yeah, there's a gem of some kind that like glows and sparkles.
I tried throwing that at them.
I did too.
Yeah.
We locked on to the same shit. We were like, that looks different. those are weird. Let's mash them together.
Yeah, but I spent like way too much time in this area because I did not notice the building where the exit thing is.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was just like a shape.
This is anecdotal evidence because there are two of us. Hello, I'm Chad Ryman. He's Andy Koenig.
Yes.
But I did exactly the same thing.
Huh.
I missed that one completely, and it makes me think that it's designed that way because you get really caught up on the farm part.
Yeah.
Because you go there and there's all the hooks.
The buildings on the other side where you find the other paper.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, wow, look at all this stuff. And then you go, see you later, and you run away. Because there's only one exit and entrance from that, and it's like not really within the eye line of the thing. So what you actually have to do is essentially just like go toward the big black moon.
Yeah.
So I think it is intentional. I think they want you to be kind of lost and confused.
Yeah, and like it's at a point in the game where you don't know like what your goal is. Like once you get through this part, like you can pretty safely assume like each area is like make it through, like be observant, but you're just kind of looking for like the exit thing.
Yeah.
But you don't know that when you get to the red zone.
Okay, I'm gonna make my second Rascal episode reference of the episode.
Oh, you have your acceleration.
You have acceleration. Like a human doesn't really, not noticeably.
I think experts are in consensus that he might be
a car. You get on the road. There's a road, and if you just hold sprint and run down the road, and then you just look at the screen, you're like, I'm a car. I'm in a car's lane, moving at about the speed of a car. There's something weird about the scale of everything that makes it feel really naturally car-like, and it baffles me.
Yeah, it might be the size of the area makes it stand out more.
I think you only move that fast there.
I don't remember.
I don't really either, but I did get the idea.
It's probably true.
Yeah. That's all I gotta say.
Because there's just so much more ground to cover. But then you move on to Acid Rainforest.
Yes, the Thorn Forest.
Yeah.
I like the Thorn Forest.
It's not a lot there, though.
No, it's really... It is where you find the connection to the Moon Sliver.
Right.
Or at least the first one. There may be more that I'm just forgetting. Because you find this note written by this guy. And it refers
like the
to...
readings of Roger.
Hector. Yeah.
There's Hector and there's Roger is another name.
Yeah.
Though. Yeah.
Roger is either that guy or the guy who writes the Heretic pages.
I think that's probably it.
Or both. They may be the same guy. I don't remember. Which is important to the interpretation, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't have that infer.
Yeah, I don't have that infer.
But yeah, I like the area because it has more of a... First of all, you can die here if you stand out in the rain. That. Yeah. If you stand out for long enough, it does actually kill you. And then I think you just have to restart the game. I don't know if it lets you load a save. Which is interesting. But it gives like... It makes... Because Haley has this like very coy personality. Like,
she's trying to play it cool.
Yeah.
Like, there's a part at the beginning where you can find, like, some cigarette butts, and she's, like, trying to, like, ask if she can smoke them or whatever. She's trying to, like, look mature. Yeah. For Quentin.
And it's... this kind of, like, gives you a reminder that she is, like, a human person. And it makes Quentin feel a lot worse as well. Yeah. Because he is pretty callous about it. He's just like, whatever, we're going to go out in the stinging bad rain for however long it takes. But yeah, there's not much here. As far as I know, there's nothing here that you need to progress at all.
No, it's just story stuff, I think.
Yeah. And the same goes for
The Void.
The Void, which is our last one before the music machine itself.
Yeah.
I didn't love the Void part, if I'm being real.
I mean, it just isn't anything. It's just a cutscene, really.
It's a cutscene, yeah.
I don't know. I was like kind of all right. You talk to a chair.
You do. Did you interpret it as the voice coming from the chair?
I did, yeah.
Okay. I thought it was coming from the big celestial orb.
I mean, that's also a valid thought, but like,
who knows, really?
You walk in and it felt like a joke, so maybe the joke is that it looks like it's the chair, but it isn't. Or maybe it is just like, does this form please you? You know, sort of a thing.
What is
that?
A
it
chair,
took the form
really?
of a chair. But I just, as soon as like I saw that, I was just like, oh, yep, the voice is the chair.
It's a very like, it's a very Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of thing.
Yeah. For
the chair to be the voice of God. I just looked at the timer and had a panic attack. Yeah. So let's move on. As quickly
I told you
as
this
can.
game could have had its own episode.
It could have. This is a very meaty one.
Yeah.
You go through the music machine, and basically the music machine is a puzzle zone that, when you solve it, sends you back through all of the other worlds. And then when you come back to the music machine, it's like you've been found by these...
Spindlemen?
The Spindlemen, which is great, because they're essentially like little gods who can create matter and stuff at will. And it's a really interesting villain to just throw in at the end of the game.
Yeah, it's a really great segment when you get dropped into the yellow area where they all are.
Yeah.
And you just have to like walk past them. They're very like Slender Man adjacent.
They really are, yeah. But yeah, I like them. I like that concept. I like that they made the music machine but haven't really like quite gotten language, or like the English language at least.
Yeah, it's like there's like an element of like childishness or like naivete to them. Which
They're
is
great.
Interesting, yeah.
And then you shoot them with a gun.
Yeah, part of me wondered if you were gonna have the choice to either kill Haley or the Spindlemen.
Yeah.
But as far as we could tell, on the NOCLIP podcast, on NOCLIP Pocket, as far as we could tell, you can't do that.
No, yeah, you just
maybe
shoot
you
'em.
can. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't just shoot them. Except you do. You do just shoot them, as it turns out.
And then you get to take Haley to Elysium.
Yes, and Elysium has more than one color.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and Haley gets to drive her own body for a while.
Yeah.
Which is a car.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Fuck. Okay. There's more to this game, but I think we're just gonna move on.
Yeah, we're gonna have to move on.
Yeah. If you want us to return to the music machine, we won't. There's no way in fuck that we're gonna get any more content out of it now.
But it was a good time.
It was a good time. I liked it. Iron Lung. Boom. We're back. 2022.
Iron Lung, baby.
There were games released in between Music Machine and this, but this was the game that I actually wanted to do originally. When it came out, it's what made me like go, now we can do that thing.
Now is an excuse.
Yeah, because I knew that Iron Lung was also supposed to be extremely short. And it is. It's only it took me like an hour and 20 minutes, I think, to beat. And that's with dying once. So it's a pretty brisk time, but it sure doesn't feel that way. And I wanted to say that I feel like we're going to have different feelings on Iron Lung. This is like game of the year for me. It's not quite there. I'll have to do some deep thinking on it. I think that Iron Lung is one of the best horror games that I've played in like a long time.
Wow.
And it is, and I say it knowing more than any other game that I've ever liked that this is just not gonna be for some people.
I'm surprised it's for you.
I know.
Because I loved pretty much everything about it except the core gameplay, which I found to be incredibly tedious. Like it's interesting, but I felt like it wore out its welcome by like the halfway mark pretty thoroughly.
Yeah. I think there's something about it. The reason that I like it, the core gameplay, is because it's... Do you remember the best part of Edith Finch with the fish chopping?
Oh, yeah.
Where you're doing two things at once? The concept behind that is that the fish chopping job was so mundane and boring that it faded into the background of his life. Mm-hmm. And I was getting that vibe with the navigation. Because I was just checking numbers, looking at the map, navigating toward it. And it made me focus a lot more on the other stuff. Specifically the absolutely devastatingly good sound design in this game. And it is, to me, like, this is like one of the scariest games that I've played in a long time. Mostly because of that, and it does it with, like, no visuals at all. Like, there's a couple of moments of actual, like, visual things occurring. But for the most part, you're looking at dials. Mm-hmm. And I just really, I don't know. I hated it when I started playing. And then I got a hang of it, and I just immediately was lost in it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I agree. Like, the sound design is great. I think that's like those kind of ambient sound effects are like a shortcut to victory. I noted this when we played 999, which takes place on like a luxury cruise ship. Like it has the constant creaking of the boat. And like other games that like take place in like winter have like the rushing wind sound. Like that always creates like such an easy way to create like really thick affecting atmosphere. And like this always has like the creaking of the sub and like the sound of the blood or water rushing past and stuff. And there's all like the little creaks and the great moment where the fire starts behind you and you had to notice it and put it out.
That is triply great if you are just, like, dead lost in doing the navigation, too.
But, like, I found that, like, I had the opposite effect, though, where, like, it took so much of my concentration to navigate that I didn't notice a lot of the other stuff most of the time.
Yeah. I think that is sort of... I had a moment that I thought was... Like, it was like my watershed moment with this game, where I turned the corner on it. That's not true. It came way later than I was already loving it. But I had a moment that I think emphasizes what it was that I was enjoying about it. Because there's a point in the game that you get to where you have to figure out how to navigate without using the map for like a fucking second, where you have to figure out where you can move north to like cross this gulf. And the way that I did it was by going to different places and taking pictures and looking at the things. So I had gotten this habit down of like I would go until I saw like an obstacle thing that came up and I would hit the picture button and get that to print out. And I got to that point and was in the northern part of the map. And I remember seeing there's just like an obstruction, and I was like, I know this map at this point by the back of my the back of my hand. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I'll go hit the button. What is it? And there's just an eyeball. And I was like, oh, fuck, shit, damn, that was great. Mm-hmm. The game builds tension really insanely well. And it releases it at the most unexpected times. And it also just bombards you with shit that you can't possibly understand.
Yeah. I don't disagree. Like I said, like, I love everything about it except the actual thing you're doing most of the time. Like, all the other details I think are fantastic. Mm-hmm. It feels like one of those, like, really inspired indie concepts. Like you said, like I think that's like the pull quote on like the back of the box. It's like creates like super effective horror with no visuals. You know, like, and it's true.
Yeah, it's actually because I was playing at this point. I've played most half, maybe I don't know, of the next game that we're talking about on the main podcast, The Evil Within 2. And it was interesting to look back because it's a game that's very visual focused, and then these games are it's like visuals not prioritized, visuals as a standout part of the music machine, and then Iron Lung feels like it's specifically about not having like a visual.
It's about
like,
what you
style.
don't see.
It is about what you don't see. It's about what you hear. In this one, and I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was a fun game. Oh, okay. So I have two other things in. I'm not even going to talk that much about Iron Lung because I want people to go play it and let me know what they think. And so if you haven't played it yet, skip this next part. The end of the game is a very silly jump scare. What do you think?
It worked for me personally.
Yeah.
I think because like I don't know. I kind of feel like I called the game's bluff a little bit, where it seemed like the oxygen would go down at scripted points.
Yeah.
So I kind of figured something would happen as I approached the last point of interest. But like it still worked. I didn't think that the eel or whatever it is was gonna like burst into the submarine. But I don't know. I thought it just felt appropriate to me.
Yeah.
As like an ending.
It gave me the feeling of like going to a haunted corn maze. We're back on mazes somehow.
It made me think of the Mario 64 eel.
It did, yes. But it gave me that feeling because like it got me. Like it did get me with the scare. I was like, oh, well, you know. And so you get the little jump and then it's funny. You laugh about it. It was like a game where I was so... And, like, the fact that it cuts to credits. Like, at that point, you know that the stakes are now gone.
Yeah.
It gave me a jump after a big, long string. This is, like, a point in the game where the blood is now leaking into the ship.
That was my favorite detail.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Like, how it's, like, ankle deep before you even notice it's there.
Uh-huh. And then eventually it's, like, all the way up to the control panel.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, geez. I'm, like, wading through blood now. Yeah, no, I loved it. I thought it was really good. I thought it was really silly, but in a way that felt appropriate at the end of this game. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is just, there's a computer terminal, and fuck if anybody could tell me that I'm stupid for not figuring out what to do with it.
I didn't figure it out either, so...
Yeah, I ended up Googling it and just being like, computer terminal, why? And apparently, if you type in BOI, which is what the computer terminal I thought was called, but is not true, I guess. It's the Brotherhood of Iron.
Okay.
I'm not going to get into it. I wish it was easier to access this stuff because it contains basically all of the world information. I would argue that it's not that important to the game. And obviously it isn't because you don't have to do any of it to actually play the game to the conclusion. But it would be neat if anybody knew anything about the game. They throw in the great or the quiet rapture in the opening crawl and blood oceans, and then they just expect you to go like, okay.
I kind of like that you don't get any like backstory. I like that it's just like a mysterious setup. Like you're like a fugitive or whatever. You're sent to like a moon that has like a blood ocean to like explore it in this super dangerous Suicide Squad type scenario. That's all I really need. Like that's pretty metal.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I just wish that the computer either wasn't there,
yeah,
or was easier to get into because it's like there's not even that much information on it. It's like, I think there's like 4 keywords that you can figure out. But like, it's just, I don't know. It's a weird piece of thing in the game that doesn't feel like it's really doing much.
Yeah.
And I thought it was odd and wanted to comment on it. Do we have fingerbone thoughts?
My fingerbone thoughts. I feel like you've probably mentioned this guy's name to me before. I know we played A Wolf in Autumn, but like, this was all new stuff to me. I'd never looked into this developer or any of his games. And I have to say I liked them. Like, you know, I didn't dislike any of them. Yeah, like, I feel like I appreciate, as I said, like, earlier, like, I appreciate, like, a weird experimental small game. Like, there's this game that we talked about a long time ago on Pocket called Only If.
Yes.
It's like a very experimental, weird indie game, and we both like it a lot. And this is kind of scratching a similar itch, but it's got like more focus to it than that game did. So yeah, it just felt like it had been such a long time since we played anything like this.
Yeah.
Especially with like the Moon Sliver. I remember playing that and being like, this feels like Chad and Andy circa 2015 or whatever, like a game we would have played. So yeah, there was like it was fun to go back to these or to visit these games for the first time, and you know, like appreciate those, like something like Fatum Bachelor also comes to mind.
Yeah,
like weird, like lo-fi PS1 and 64 kind of aesthetic is appealing to me. But yeah, then the standout for me is the Music Machine. I think like the step up in presentation is like appreciated just because, you know, I like cool aesthetics, but it also like almost makes me feel like proud of him or something, or it's just like, oh, like look at that, like he isn't just like kind of tinkering away at experimental little things, like he actually made something like a little bit bigger and more ambitious, and pulled it off.
Yeah,
and I liked it a lot. And yeah, and so I guess my big picture, I guess, would be kind of what we were talking about there at the end with Iron Lung, is like all 4 of these games have scary moments, and they look like PlayStation 1 games. You know, like, I think it goes to show just how important like atmosphere is, how important sound design is, and like and I said it as a joke, but yeah, like the things you don't see.
Yeah.
The stuff that's implied are all really important. And I think like big budget games do that too. I think it's the visuals, like as we were kind of highlighting. I think games can get caught up in like looking too pretty, or like, you know, being too concerned with how certain things look and don't hide enough stuff from you, or don't like lose sight of the presentation, I guess. And I think these games kind of prove that like you don't have to have something super realistic or polished looking to be scary. And so that stood out the most to me, I think, on a big picture level. But yeah, this was a fun experience. It's nice that they were all so short that I could play most of them in one sitting, and yeah, I enjoyed my time with them.
Yeah. I think, honestly, building sort of off of what you laid down there in your thoughts, like, this is the perfect collection of games to hit that spot of, like, I want something that I can play in a single sitting on a night that I just want something that's a little scary. It is a feeling that I often have, but maybe is not as universal.
I do too, but definitely less often.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you just want to have like a one beer game, a game that you can play while drinking a beer. You turn the lights off, you put headphones on, or you play it with somebody else. Who gives a fuck? Just you sit and you absorb it, and because it is so short, I think it lends itself to being focused on. And it really lets you, it lets these games actually take you into them and, like, tell their story in a way that is kind of unique to short games. That is why I like this developer and why I like games like this. It is an easy to digest format, and it's something that I just like to do on occasion. So I like that we were able to jam a bunch of these together into a single episode. And I'm really happy to go back and play them. And I'm extremely happy to play the ones that I have not played yet, because both Music Machine and Iron Lung really blew me away in ways that IGN.com I wasn't expecting. So, yeah. And as a side note, I do want to mention just a lot of horror games these days, and this is a tired complaint that old men make.
Aren't scary.
Well, one, aren't scary, and also two, fall way further into the action genre than a lot of like survival horror of the past does. And I love, just from a rebellious perspective, how deeply unstreamable these games are. No one would want to watch somebody play Iron Lung.
Like the Moon Sliver would be the most boring to watch.
Well, I don't know. Fucking Iron Lung, all you do is look at a map.
Oh, yeah.
But it's both.
I was thinking of the Walking Sims.
Yeah, but they're all still kind of, it's in that same vein.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really difficult thing to just sit there and, like, stare at and not be the one participating.
Finger bones is like, all right, gonna start the stream. All right, the stream's over.
Good job, guys. So yeah, that's, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I fucking really like this guy and will continue to play whatever he makes, pretty much, until he does something wrong. Just kidding, I love you.
Proud of you.
Proud of you. Thank you for listening to the longest no-clip pocket ever this week.
No-clip advance.
Yeah, we're getting there.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're continuing Halloween and are going to be talking about a game much more focused on its visuals, Bendy and the Ink Machine.
A long time coming.
It really is.
I think this got booted off the list like 3 years in a row now.
Oh yeah, it was approaching Costume Quest territory of Halloween games we'll never do. But here it is. We're going to do it this time.
Yeah, and I feel like I've looked this up multiple times, but I feel like it's also kind of like an adventure, walkie, simulator, puzzly thing. But yeah, it's like a haunted cartoon studio. Like you got like a Mickey Mouse style, like 30s mascot character that's like haunting you or whatever, something like that.
This is the one game, I think, of this collection that I, one, have not played at all, and two, was more your suggestion than
mine. I just remember seeing like a trailer for it or whatever and just thinking it looked really cool, and obviously have avoided specific information about it because I knew I wanted to play it. Yeah,
so now we actually do get to play it, so check it out then. Until next spooky time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our terrifying website, noclippodcast.com. There you can find links to our Twitter account, our email address, the YouTube, where we post all of our episodes, including a big, long Halloween playlist that will grow many stronger this year.
Yes, like a Hydra. If you watch one episode, 3 more will spring up in its place.
At least once a year.
Yes.
So, check that out for everything else. Scary.
Spook that like button.
Spook that like button. Take the subscribe button and throw it into the sea.
Shoot the spindle man in the comment section.
Goodbye.
Szymanski.
Fuck you. Where are any of those syllables coming from?